Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Black Mirror. I played on the Xbox Series X via backwards compatibility. It's also available on the Xbox One, PS4, and PC. Now apparently this is actually like the fourth game. There have been previous Black Mirror games, but this is the first one I have played. So let's get into the story. You play as David Gordon. You're going to your ancestral home for the first time ever. You have been raised in India by your mother. What draws you there is the death of your father, who you haven't seen in who knows how long. But obviously, this being a video game, it's not that simple, because next thing you know, there's murder and occultism and all sorts of other crazy weird shit going on. And the story definitely has some H.P. Lovecraft vibes with, you know, cursed family and occultism and weird stuff like that. I will say it definitely has a happier ending than any H.P. Lovecraft story I've read, which I gotta admit, some of the stories, ooh, dude. Not necessarily horror, but man, there's some horror in some of the crap you could write back then. But overall, I will say I actually like the story that they're telling. It is a little weird and jumpy at times. There are certain bits of information that kind of seem like they're just thrown at you out of nowhere. And some of them do get explained later. Like, if you don't read documents in a specific order, you might find out something and be a little confused and then get the explanation a bit later. It's weirdly done, and it does feel like there are just odd jumps in the story. Now let's get into the audio, and I'm gonna say first off, the voiceover work is better than I was expecting. Not the best though. It's not excellent, but it is good, and I like that they incorporate like the actual Gaelic language and stuff like that in it, because this does take place in Scotland, and they have a lot of accents. I don't know how genuine they are. I'm hoping and assuming they're genuine, but they work well, and I think overall, while the voiceover work isn't the best I've ever heard, I do think it's good and it works well overall with the story. As for the sound effects, they're kind of cheap in a lot of ways. They're not necessarily mind-shattering. They work well enough, but they're not amazing. And then the music, I think, works very well. I think the music goes very well with the game. I was actually impressed with it, and I really actually liked the song for the credits. Big fan of it, so music I give thumbs up to. But let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is very much an interactive narrative / adventure game, whatever you want to call it. So it's a lot of wandering about, trying to find items and solve puzzles, and, you know, it works all right. It definitely got a little annoying at times because there's not a lot of explanation going on, so some of the puzzles can be very frustrating and lead you into exploration that can fail you intensely because this game has some serious glitchy issues. But the puzzles and searching for documents and so on, it's all a lot of fun. I will say there are collectibles, but there's really no need to bother with them, honestly, as I did not collect them all and I still got all the achievements. But let's get into some of the glitches that I ran into while playing this game. Like, one of the times I went to do a puzzle and he just kind of froze in place and wouldn't move and couldn't move, and I couldn't freeze him. So I had to reload, and when I reloaded, the candle that was lighting the very, very dark room was now magically gone. Meaning I really couldn't see the shelf that I had unlocked. I could barely see the puzzle I was doing. The couple of cutscenes that then happened were pitch black, and I had no idea what the fuck was going on. That's a problem. That's not an okay thing to have happen. And I don't know if I was supposed to have that candle the rest of the game, because there were plenty of other dark places where I didn't have a light. There was an NPC that followed me around with a light, but never close enough to be of any real use. Then there was another moment where I was exploring to try and find an item to solve a puzzle, and I got stuck in an area, and it just wouldn't let me leave the area. I would go off screen, and it wouldn't kick in the loading to the new area. So what the fuck is up with that? Yeah, I was stuck in that area, and I had to reload the game to, you know, unfuck that. I lost a little bit of progress, but not much, but still, it's not okay that that shit happens. And as for the game flowing weird and just feeling glitchy, I guess it wasn't really a glitch, but my character woke up, he had a conversation with the maid, and then all of a sudden he's in the bathroom having a panic attack, and you have to calm him down, do a little mini game for that, and it just was weird, because he went from having a pretty normal conversation, well, not normal, but being calm during this conversation, to freaking out for no reason whatsoever. So while that's not necessarily a glitch, it is just this weird buggy buggy feeling to the game when they make these odd jumps like that, and that's not the only time something like that occurred. Now let's get into the controls. What you think? How could they possibly be bad? This is a simple game. They're bad. They're just bad. Really, moving around and interacting with objects is pretty awful in this game. They could have done much better with like the interaction with items in your inventory. They could have done better with the movement, because there are times where you're not going the direction that you are pushing on the stick. It's really frustrating at times because it'll bounce you back and forth between rooms occasionally. It just doesn't make sense why that even happens. This is really a fairly simple game from a control standpoint, and yet the controls are trash. Then lastly, the graphics and visuals. I'm gonna say I kind of like the visual style they had, where it was almost comic book, not fully realistic looking. I think that actually was a neat storytelling element, and I will say that the castle that this takes place in, the area, it feels like a real place. It feels like it could be a real ancestral home that has fallen upon hard times. And I think they did a good job with that, actually. There are plenty of things, though, on the other hand, that they did not do a good job with. For example, the fact that you can see the frame that all the textures are basically placed over at times. And I mean, you can't necessarily see it, but you can kind of see it bleeding through, so you get all these weird, flashing lights when you're moving through the castle sometimes. And it's just, that's really distracting. It is incredibly noticeable because you have this dark atmosphere and then these weird lights coming through it, and they're clearly not part of the story. They're clearly just not supposed to be there, but you're seeing it anyways. Other weird glitches, like items being stuck in tables. Like, I had a tray that was just wedged in a table as if somebody planted it there like an axe. A lot of the characters' movements don't feel very natural. It's poorly directed, I would say. There were entire conversations where my characters were supposed to be facing each other and they weren't, and it looked really awkward. And just, there are other small details in the world that don't look quite as good as they could that I wish did. Visually, I wish there was more to this game. I wish it looked a bit better. Yes, it's not necessarily a brand new game. Yes, I understand it's not a AAA game, but I've seen better looking games from indie developers. So to wrap this up, I've got to say, I want to enjoy this game so much more than I am able to. The story I actually liked, the audio I thought was good, but the things that really hold up the story, the gameplay, which I would say is one of the most important elements of all games, as well as the controls and the visuals, they just weren't there for the game. None of those things benefited the experience, and that's disappointing to me, so I'm gonna say Black Mirror would have been a better movie than a video game, and since it's not a movie, you can skip it. I'd actually watch the shit out of this if it was like a movie or a TV show. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, has there ever been a video game that you thought would be a better movie or TV show? This is definitely on that list for me. This may be starting that list for me. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one. Then there was another moment where I was...